By the way, how's the campaign going?
Swell. I shouldn't chuckle, but it's.
No, I'm saying with the only candidate running,
I
I
know.
suppose you have a big advertising campaign.
I was very like, yes, ready to rock, and then I was like, are you serious? Really? No one? So I'm spending a lot of time with my kids because I know once December rolls around, unless someone gets written in, then I'm gonna have not as much free time. So
Hmm.
6 o'clock.
Okay, good. All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the July 5th, 2016 regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Annie, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I'd love to. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Annie Lane,
Here.
Commissioner Lane,
Here.
Commissioner Van Woffen,
Here.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes. Here, present, whatever.
Commissioner Pasiak,
Here.
Commissioner Bacon,
Present.
and Chair Merrick.
Here. Okay, we're going to pass through the
Lawrence
minutes.
Sloan is absent
Absent.
tonight.
We're going to pass through the minutes because there are no minutes available. Staff reports.
None this evening.
Okay, moving forward to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Item 6A, consideration of public hearing regarding amending the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO Chapter 2 definitions, Sections 2.1, meaning of words and terms, repealing Chapter 4.21 sign regulations, and adopting new Chapter 4.21 sign regulations consisting of Sections 4.21.1 purpose, 4.21.2 permits required, 4.21.3 general sign regulations, 4.21.4 measurement of signs, 4.21.5 sign standards, 4.21.6 temporary signs, 4.21.7 prohibited signs, 4.21.8 non-conforming signs, and 4.21.9 violations removal, as set forth in the amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance of the Town of Chino Valley related to signs dated July 26, 2016.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. We have before you the public participation process. We went over this last week, so I'll be brief about it. The only change here is that we have a final review this evening and a vote to cancel. Thus far, we've had meetings with business owners in-house, that mean in our office. We've had media outreach with both the Courier and the Chino Valley Review, and we've had several meetings here at P&Z, as well as a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, and some advisory group meetings where we got much of this language. This is just another breakdown of those meetings. As you can see, we've had 3 committee meetings thus far, and this will be our 6th P&Z meeting this evening. If it feels like we've gone over this a lot, we sure have. Our meeting at Town Council will be on July 26th. That's 3 weeks from now at their 2nd meeting of the month, and we hope to have a vote that evening. Just some key points about the existing regulations we have in place versus what we're proposing. We have 22 pages currently in our sign code. A lot of that is including conflicting provisions, highly restrictive regulations. It isn't compliant with the Reed versus Gilbert decision, which is the impetus for coming forward with this one. And it's also difficult to understand and interpret. Our proposed one is half the length. It removes those conflicting provisions, or attempts to, and allows for more signage. What we have been told by business owners are more reasonable sign standards. We've worked with legal to get it compliant with the Reed versus Gilbert decision, and we have a new table format which we believe is easier to understand, and we hope will help people find the items more quickly. So these are the proposed sign regulations. As you can see, the big change here is that we're looking over definitions this evening. I'm not going to go through each and every one of the new, deleted, and amended definitions. I invite you to ask me about definitions as we go along. I have a list of additions, a list of deletions, and a list of amendments coming up. You'll see that the deletions and the additions are very similar. What we've done is anywhere that, I'll just show you. For example, we deleted the animated sign, changed that to animation. There are just some general changes that have allowed us to be a little more flexible. And then in other cases, things like banner, comma, sign have been changed to sign, comma, banner. Not a big change, just makes it easier for people reading through to hit our definition section and go straight to sign. I realize there's a lot up here on this screen at once, so I will read through them once, and if anybody has any questions on a specific one, we can go directly to that page in the ordinance and check it out, okay? Animated sign was deleted. Awning, canopy, or marquee sign. Banner sign, billboard sign, business sign, cabinet sign, construction or development sign, directional sign, directory sign, figurative sign, fixed balloon, freestanding monument sign, menu board sign, off-site sign, parapet sign, political sign, portable sign, reader panel sign, real estate sign, residential kiosk sign, roof sign, shingle sign, vehicle sign, wall sign, and window sign were all deleted. As you can see on the adjacent list, we've added a lot of those back in with just the wording reversed on them for ease of finding the word sign. Additions here are animation, awning, canopy, marquee sign, sign awning, sign banner, sign billboard, sign copy, sign face, sign figurative, sign freestanding, sign monument, sign off-site or off-premise, sign parapet, sign political, sign portable, sign projecting, sign reader panel, sign roof, sign shingle, sign vehicle, and sign wall. So as you can see, many of those are the same item, just with the wording reversed. Amendments are to 3 definitions. Illuminated signs, we've amended that definition. Non-conforming signs, that definition has also been amended, and the definition of sign has also been amended. Are there any in particular we'd like to look at?
I just have a question.
Absolutely.
For the meaning of words and terms, is this going into the comprehensive definitions category in the code, or would this just be under the sign section?
This will be in the UDO, so it'll go under the regular definitions section in our code. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So it doesn't just pertain to the sign code, it pertains to the complete UDO,
That's
all these
correct.
definitions.
That's correct. Yes.
So that makes it easier to look up a sign and then see them all in the new order that they're being provided.
We are hoping so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any comments or questions? Claude, anything?
I briefed you all before the meeting, just real quickly. I've added, or I've given you a new set of amendments, basically that reflect our newest version. The version I sent out with the packet had some comments from legal in it, and I wanted to get those out of there. And we didn't have a definition of signed copy until tonight, so any of those items we can go over. If you're comfortable with moving on, we can move on.
Any questions, comments?
Okay.
Just a general question. What are the changes, since you went over this in detail
Sure.
Last time? What are the changes that have occurred since last time?
So we've added the definitions
Mhm.
and changed some of the definitions. We've added the parapet sign illustration back in, and we've changed some of the wording in parapet sign allowances to make sure that says valance rather than face of the awning, or face of, yeah. So I actually mean awning sign, not parapet sign. I'm sorry about that. So the one thing we do need to go over in detail and maybe come up with some suggestions on is electronic signage and the minimum time per message. Our legal team has added in a new definition of animation, and it doesn't cover a minimum amount of time displayed for message. If we'd like to go over that, I can go right to that section. Otherwise, we can just go right back through it for the benefit of those who weren't here at the last meeting as well.
Why don't we just take a look at the animation one?
Okay.
What page?
It's on page 1, actually, and it's your first definition here. So, animation, as it pertains to signs, the presentation of pictorials and graphics on signs displayed in a progression of frames which give the illusion of movement of any part of the sign structure, design, or pictorial segment, including but not limited to the illusion of moving objects, moving patterns, or bands of light, or expanding or contracting shapes.
And there's no wordage in here concerning time frame of the images.
There is not. This is what I believe is a definition out of the International Marketing Association, Marketing and Sign Association's definitions from a model sign code. I believe that's where they were pulled from. So we can make any changes we deem necessary and send those back through legal. As long as they're signed off on, they'll go straight to town council.
James, have you looked into the city of Prescott or any other communities which have enacted a similar sign code with the minimum change requirement?
I have, but I don't recall them off the top of my head. I actually noticed those changes weren't in there just before this meeting, so I haven't done much research recently on it. So I will do a little bit of digging, definitely.
James, is
Yes.
there a commercial standard or an industrial standard for the length of time something should be?
The International Sign Association actually held a model sign ordinance workshop that I attended, and they were suggesting 6 seconds as a minimum amount of time to display a message.
Okay.
That's been proven through psychological studies not to distract the eye any more than a regular sign would, but it really is up to each and every community to make that decision. 6 seconds is a pretty short amount of time, but if you're traveling at 45 miles an hour, you may not see a change.
The reason I'm asking is at that time, I think within a couple of years ago, the city of Prescott made some changes to their sign code, and they may have addressed it at that time.
Okay.
And secondly, going through my former, where I used to work in Southern California, particularly the Palm Desert area, they had put up the large billboards as these LED signs.
Yeah.
And so I noticed very closely the time span That was 2 years ago, and it seemed to work, whatever it was.
Okay.
Because I was a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, 5-lane road. And I'm thinking, yeah, that works for the time span.
Okay.
I'm just throwing out some suggestions for those communities that may have them.
Absolutely.
It's either Palm Desert, Palm Springs, or Cathedral City, one of the desert towns.
Okay.
And is there a standard for brightness?
The standard for brightness is much higher than we would allow here under our dark sky ordinance. They love to just blast you with lumens because it looks bright and shiny and wonderful. But we wouldn't allow that under our dark sky ordinance.
Well, the reason that I bring this up, and I realize my eyes are kind of old
Mhm.
compared to others, but the high school marquee,
Uh-huh.
was driving by one night, and then whatever flashed on the screen was so bright that it was kind of shocking.
Really?
I had to turn
Okay.
my head, because we were traveling at night, so yeah, I'm sure it was much worse. But is there a difference between what they run at day and what they run at night?
There typically is, yes. They're usually brighter during the day
Yeah.
so that they can be seen in full sunlight, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I can do is come up with a range and present those to council if you're comfortable with that. Otherwise, we can come back to it.
It would be good to present some sort of time frame and
Okay.
just for them to have some scale to look at.
Okay. Time frames.
Anybody here have a scale preference or a time frame preference for the signs?
Well, I wouldn't want to, when it comes to voting on this, I definitely would like to see a recommendation set before council, because
Absolutely.
this is like the state of the art now. If we're approving this, something has to be in there.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be in there before council, absolutely.
My thought is, you went to a convention specifically on signage. Applause to you for that. I think if there have been studies and it's the standard for 6 seconds, perhaps if we gave a range between 6 to 10 seconds to council, I don't think that would be unreasonable.
I don't feel comfortable in giving any type of guess. It's involving guesswork on my
Yeah.
part without any facts or research.
Okay.
I'm just sharing my opinion.
No, understand.
James, you have the standards from the National Sign Association or something like that?
Our attorneys do, yes.
Okay, but they don't provide some sort of time frame references?
They haven't in our case, but we haven't specifically asked our attorneys for that. So we definitely will between then and now, between now and the upcoming council meeting. But I'll also do some research across the board to see what other jurisdictions are doing.
So maybe we can include some wordage in here that the time frame, pending time frame
Sure.
references
For
provided by
electronic
town
signs.
staff or something to
Yeah,
that effect.
yeah, that would work.
Any opposition to that?
No.
Sounds good.
I have another question.
Yes,
When
go
talking
ahead.
about
Go ahead.
marquees like the high school, and they run different advertising, they make money off of that for
Mhm.
different projects. Do they have to have whatever it is they're going to flash, they're approved by anybody? Or once you have a marquee like that, you're just allowed to put stuff up?
They don't have to get the signed copy looked at each and
Okay,
every time.
that's what I
Yeah.
wondered. Okay. Because it would be, with Reed versus Gilbert, we don't want to take into consideration composition on the signs or,
That's true,
Content,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And it's also very impractical for their day-to-day operations to have to come to us every time they want to change a message, so, yeah.
I just wonder sometimes the graphics might be too distracting, but, like I said, my eyes are older than others that go by, so perhaps it's just me.
Okay.
Jim, I have one question or comment.
Yes,
On page 11, on this double-face sign, should we have any restriction in there saying that if we have a double-face sign, we consider it as one sign, that the message or the signage has to be the same on both sides? Since we no longer control content at all, it would seem to me that it would lead us wide open to scripture types of signage here. And shouldn't it be identical? I mean, that's really the purpose, so it can be seen from both sides.
I think the one issue we might run into with that is billboards. For example, there are a lot of billboards that are double-faced and they sell a side
They sell
to a
both
different
sides.
customer. Yeah. So I think that would be problematic, and we would be definitely restricting some cash flow for the billboard owner in that case. Aside from that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we would be restricting them that much.
Pardon?
Yeah, I'm not sure we would be restricting businesses that much otherwise. But I do think we would be restricting those billboard types and would significantly cut down on their revenue.
Well, it isn't quite the same as a billboard, because obviously we're restricting it to the designated areas that we have in the code. But still in all, the idea is when you put one of those signs up at a slight angle, so it has visibility from both sides in both directions, we would think that would have the same message on both sides. But I don't see anything in here that provides for that. And then are we getting twice as much signage for half the amount of money? I don't know.
I'd have to say, to answer your question, instead of James, Commissioner, and the multiple jurisdictions that I've had the privilege of working in, this is a similar requirement. They don't address the types of messages or what is on each sign face. They just consider it a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Would that not also be going against the Reed Supreme Court decision if we're dictating content?
I think we're in a murky area there. We wouldn't be dictating content. We would just be dictating that content matches the other content that we did allow. So that is kind of a murky area there. I don't see a major benefit to making it match on both sides. If you're driving by one way and it says, thanks for coming, and the other way says welcome, I don't see an issue with that. Are there any other thoughts?
It could also say, be advertising mattresses on one side and roller coasters on the other. You know, I mean, it could be completely different.
And by
I don't know. I don't care.
Sure. And the thing that comes to mind is if those are both on-site uses, that's okay. If one's an off-site use and they're advertising that way, we prevent that through off-site signage anyway.
So, Claude, your thinking is that by the guys getting 2 for 1 is the way you're looking at it.
Yeah, and I think if the text is the same on both sides, it seems to be perfectly fair to count it as just one sign. But if they're giving you a different message on each side, other than welcome or that kind of thing, it would seem to me that they're getting more signage than someone that is doing it a different way, that putting a parallel sign on rather than perpendicular.
No, they're getting the same area. They're getting the same area of the sign. If they want to put smaller messages on it or different messages on it, because that's what it says with multi-face signs. It says two-face sign shall be considered one sign when determining the sign area. So they still have the same area. It's just that it's on two sides.
So they're not gaining an advantage in size, they're just gaining an advantage in exposure. That's,
Okay.
I would think that if we went your direction, it would be restrictive to business. For instance, if I own a restaurant and I know that the traffic going into Prescott in the morning is going to see one side and coming home that night is another, I might advertise a breakfast on one side and a dinner on the other that would catch that traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. And is that okay?
Yeah.
Fine with
Currently,
me
it
if
is, yes. Yeah.
As long as it's
Okay.
with something I would like for dinner, it's fine with me.
Okay.
okay, did that satisfy you?
Yeah.
Okay, James, anything else?
No, but I would like to just run through the presentation very quickly. It's the same as last time, but just for the benefit of those who weren't here.
Before you do so, I have a question
Yes,
on a couple of things I
absolutely.
brought up before.
Absolutely.
On page 10,
10.
I got my first beehive, and if I am so ever so fortunate to have an excess of honey, I plan on putting a 10 by 20 sign on my property, because my property is 300 feet back of an interior lot, and it's going to say Bacon's Honey. And if I look at the sign code, there's no limit to the signs I could put on my property. In fact, I'll put up a 20 by 40 sign because I'm 400 feet back to my house. So there's no limit on what sign I can put up, correct?
Are we looking at,
Signs on residentially zoned property, wall, window, or ground mounted. And I'm saying this facetiously
No,
because
I
someone
know.
comes in and
Oh,
being
I
a former
understand.
planner,
Yeah.
there's no limit.
we
And,
need, we need to address that. I believe we went over it, may not have made the changes. So what we proposed, and there's a reason we've changed it to signs on residentially zoned property, is we've proposed a restriction there. It has not made it in here, though.
Okay.
So we have proposed a restriction there, and it's more like 4 to 6 square feet, depending on
Okay.
your zoning.
There
So,
goes my big
yes.
sign idea.
No, I think that's
I'm-
I think that's
I'm
great, and
joshing
thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
Okay.
You would be shocked at the number of versions of this I have.
Well, there's a lot of detail here, so
Okay.
the more eyes, the better.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, with that, we'll move on to each and every section of the sign code. I will be very quick, I promise. So we've got a purpose. It's the general purpose for each and every sign code in the nation: public safety and welfare, economic vitality for local businesses, and to prevent over-proliferation of signs and maintain a high quality of signs. Permits are required. We've moved this up from the back to the front. We haven't changed any fees or anything like that. That would be an entirely different process from this one, which we may or may not look at in the future. There's still $100 per sign permit. That includes multiple signs on a permit if they choose to do so. So if they come in with 40 different signs that we have to look at on one permit, costs the same as one sign. On a temporary sign permit, it's still $5 per month. We allow them to pay in advance for up to a year. That's just $60. Makes their life a little easier and our life a little easier. It establishes a sign permit process, which we had in place before, and exempts certain classes of signs. That table is on the following slide and is the one that we talked about just recently. So exempt signs with no permits required are shown here. These are your standard exemptions, essentially official notices, government signs, posters, flags in non-commercial zones are allowed at 15 square feet per flag, and you're allowed 2 per parcel. This is a change from last time. We had unlimited flags before. A-frame signs are allowed without a permit. You're only allowed 2 per frontage. Signs located within structures in commercial districts, if it's a window sign, it is exempt from permitting. Signs on residentially zoned property also exempt from permitting. We will be changing that limit to match with what's in the current sign code.
Excuse me, James,
Yes,
I had a
no
question at
problem.
the last meeting too on window signs.
Yes.
Because in our current code, we restrict the amount of windows that can be covered with signs. I noticed in my going down to Prescott,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed parked there by the traffic light that one of the convenience stores, and it's a chain, and they have the large windows, and
Uh-huh.
they've covered every ounce, and it's just like a big billboard.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how the rest of the commissioners think, but this is like, I'm trying to be positive here, but we seem out here in the West in the smaller communities to have a higher quality lifestyle. And this seemed like somewhat like the inner city, right in Prescott. And I just wonder, is that how the commissioners feel about that? We get a store comes in, they have the big windows, and they decide one day to cover all the big commercial windows with signage so you cannot see in at all.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's appropriate, but
Okay.
There is a convenience store on Montezuma Street that uses that same technique. They have a lot of glass on the front of their building, and it's totally covered with signage.
Mhm.
And I would not disagree with your assessment that it's pretty garish.
Okay. Other thoughts from commissioners?
Well, those would be temporary signs advertising sales, correct? Like today is
Not,
milk's on sale, or is this?
some of them were, but on this particular store, it's almost like a part of the front of the store.
Is it almost like a building wrap, but on
Exactly.
the inside?
Yes.
Only on the
Oh,
inside.
okay.
I think I know which ones you're talking about
Yeah.
now.
And no judgment on
Yeah.
them, it's just,
Uh-huh.
do we want to set some sort of limit for that?
Thoughts?
it's currently 25% in
Mhm.
the pass sign code. I'm willing to stick with that, because if you have 6 large windows, then that can cover like a window and a half. We can consider enlarging it. I'm always willing to enlarge it, but to say no limit, I can't agree with that.
Are there any other thoughts from other commissioners?
Has there been any complaints with the 25% rule?
We've never had complaints with it, but I also don't believe that it's well regulated. I think it's because they're exempt signs now, there is no check on them.
No enforcement?
Yeah. So I think we've got a case on our hands where we haven't been enforcing the rules very well, at least from my knowledge, and we haven't received any complaints one way or the other, but I'm definitely willing to consider a change from no limit. Absolutely.
To
Yeah.
Commissioner Bacon's point, there is a building 2 North and Highway 89 that has constant window coverage. So I see what you're saying there. At the same time, I don't want to be restrictive to businesses, assuming it's not neon pawn shop. I'm kind of torn on this decision. I think that there should be a happy medium between no limit and more than 25%.
I think 25% is restrictive. If I have a convenience store front that's all glass, that's a great opportunity to advertise something. And at the same time, I'm torn. Also, I don't want it to look tacky, but then my definition of tacky and yours may not be the same.
And I understand that,
And-
but
And I have a tendency to lean toward not wanting to restrict business, especially in a small town where it's hard enough to gain business. But 25% to me seems really, really tight if I have a glass front building.
Hmm.
I might go 50%, I might go 70% even.
Well, I would consider 50%, but I'm looking at the idea is that why are windows there to begin with? Is it an advertising medium? Or because how much light is it really letting in? So would we allow these on just walls? We wouldn't allow them on just on walls, but someone would say, well, let's put up a window, we're not going to let any light in, but it's another advertising media.
And with those wraps like they do on the buses, you can let light in and still have a picture or something facing out. And even for, if you were thinking safety purposes, thinking like a police officer,
Mhm.
if I'm going by that at night, patrolling and checking on the safety of these folks, those graphics, if I can see in at night, then kind of meets that requirement as well. I don't know. I really hesitate to restrict a business in their advertising like that.
What if we just, at this point, we can argue out the percentage between 50 and 75%, but it also, if it becomes an issue, you get some complaints on it, that figure can be revised. I mean, it's not, doesn't mean that just because we say tonight that it has to be this much. If there's some sort of movement to go one way or the other, we can certainly review that and take a second look at it.
We can
Right now, it'd be a
absolutely do that.
difficult, I mean, I understand where Commissioner Bacon's going,
Mhm.
but also, we want to be as pro-business as we can be and still be within the limits of what the rules are. So I would suggest somewhere between 50 and 75%, and we can maybe talk that out a little bit.
Okay. I think that's a really good kind of balance. I can also, I think what I'll do is, once these changes have been made, send it out to the commission again for review. Again, we can't have any reply all, but as long as you guys have a chance to review it, would that be an okay option for you?
Mhm. In other words, you want like this to move along, so, okay.
We do want to have it at council by July 26th, yes.
I'm fine with that.
Yes, Mr. Baker.
I would not be in favor of any restriction. If you put a 75% restriction on it, are we talking about total area? Are you talking about 75% of each window? What do we do with glass doors? It seems to me we're restricting the business, and I don't know that there's any great commotion going on out there objecting to this.
Well, again, in the commission's favor, if there's some opposition one way or the other, we can certainly amend this. It's not like we gotta chisel it in granite and it costs $1 million to look at it again.
That's true.
So I understand Commissioner Bacon's concern, because it is a concern, and if this thing becomes out of control in the town of Chino Valley, then we amend the sign code that says, hey, you gotta tone it down. But in the interest of keeping it as user-friendly to the business community as we can, which has been the goal of this whole process as much as we can, maybe we just let it ride, and if somebody takes advantage of it, we come back and do something with it. Because it's not forever that way.
We can absolutely bring forward amendments to this amendment later on. We're happy to do that, and we realize that we can't cover everything in one fell swoop, and changes do need to be made. So I'd be happy to do either way, and that's something that maybe we can have as part of the vote at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
We would just say maybe revisit this at a later time pending circumstances of
Okay.
usage.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me, I'm writing it down so I don't forget.
Also, this building that I'm talking about in Prescott, they have a hard western exposure, and I'm sure some of those signs help cut down on getting cooked out of there
Mhm.
during the day, because
I
it's
bet.
an old building with a lot of glass.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Is that south of the square that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And again, no judgment on them, they're just an example.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll keep on rolling, and stop me if you need to. We have general sign regulations. This is regulations related to any sign erected in town. All signs must be constructed to code, both the building code and the Uniform Development Ordinance. Signs shall not obstruct vehicular or pedestrian traffic either physically or visually. Signs shall be set back 6 feet from property lines. All signs shall be maintained in good repair. All signs shall be illuminated in compliance with our dark sky ordinance. Measurement of signs, we didn't really change anything here. If you have any questions, we can definitely address them. These are our sign standards. For the benefit of those who were absent at the last meeting, what we've done is changed from all residential signage in one section to all of the wall signs in one section and all of the freestanding signs in one section. Instead of separating them by use or by zoning district, we've separated them by the type of sign, and we've put them all into one table. So the wall signs are all in one table now. As you'll see as you go down, we start with residential zoning districts, move on to multifamily residential zoning districts, and commercial zoning districts. Within commercial zoning districts, we've decided to limit sign size based on the speed of the adjacent roadway. So if you're on the highway, for example, you get more signage than you would on a small collector street. Are there any questions on how we formulated that? No. Okay. The same is true of freestanding monument signs. In all cases, we've increased the allowed amount of signage for wall signs and freestanding monument signs. And those allowances are actually based on input from businesses who want a ton of signage, and from the sign contractor who said, that's way too much signage. So we've tried to come to a happy medium, and it's pretty funny when a sign contractor whose business is printing big signs tells you that's way too much. So we did try to find a happy medium here. We've changed reader panel and electronic signs to be regulated in the same way. Those reader panel signs have an 8-foot minimum height to the bottom of the sign panel now. That's for clearance for people's heads, and also to get them off the ground, especially near high schools where they tend to get vandalized and naughty words put in there and that kind of thing. And at schools and churches, electronic signs are allowed as a matter of right, and at businesses, they are allowed per use permit. So a conditional use permit would have to come forward through this body as well as town council to be approved. Awning signs, we've changed the language here to say copy shall be placed on the valance of the awning, and we've included a picture of what an awning looks like and what part's the valance. Shingle signs and projecting signs, we really didn't change too much except for the maximum area is increased slightly. And that's actually based on some examples in town that we liked. Parapet or mansard signs has not changed. It maximum is 50% of the front face area of parapet or mansard. The aggregate sign standards essentially apply to businesses and business complexes. A maximum area of 296 square feet for a single tenant development is allowed. A maximum area of 360 square feet is allowed for a multi-tenant development. If the developer so chooses, they may go through a comprehensive sign package approval process, which would be approved by the P&Z as well as town council, and they would be allowed for up to a 50% increase in the total aggregate area. So if a developer says 360 square feet of sign is nowhere near big enough for this massive mall I'm building, they can go through this and gain an increase. The provisions above shall apply unless such guidelines are addressed in an approved comprehensive sign package. So if somebody wants out of some of these provisions, they would have to go through a comprehensive sign package, same process, P&Z, then town council to be approved. Signage whose manner and placement has not been listed herein may be approved at the discretion of the zoning administrator or his her designee. So if we haven't covered it here, it may or may not be approved by the zoning administrator. Temporary signage, we did have a few changes here. Banners, flags, pennants have a maximum area of 48 square feet now, and no longer have a time limit based on quarters or grand opening events or anything like that. They are allowed to remain as long as they are maintained in good repair. So if a sign starts looking rowdy, our code enforcement officer will send a letter to the business owner. The business owners are usually really happy to comply with that because they want their business to look nice. A-frame signs, as I mentioned earlier, are limited to 2 per frontage and are limited to 12 square feet per parcel. Prohibited signs include anything not specifically listed as permitted in this chapter, and that includes off-site signs, vehicle signs, signs attached to any utility pole, structure, traffic signal, tree, fire hydrant, bridge, park bench, or other location on public property. Signs that are animated, inflatable, audible, rotate, or have intermittent or flashing illumination or emit audible sound or visible matter except time and or temperature units. So if you have an obnoxious sign, it's not allowed. Roof-mounted signs, signs displayed in a manner or location that prevent free ingress and egress from a door, window, or other exit. So if we see any health and safety issues, especially something that the building code wouldn't allow, that is not allowed. Non-conforming signs, we cleaned up this section a lot. It used to be a really confusing labyrinth of regulations. We've cleaned it up to basically say that you can continue to use your legal non-conforming sign forever, in the manner and extent that it existed before we passed this ordinance. And you can't alter that sign in any manner, not in conformance with the sign regulations now, except for reasonable repairs that don't require structural alterations. So if you want to make your sign copy look good again, we allow that. If you want to replace the poles, we're going to ask you to take the whole sign down. If you're found in violation, we've established a due process for placing illegal signs in violation. Permanent signs require a 10-day written notice before we can remove them. Temporary and portable signs require a 2-day written notice. Portable signs that are in the right-of-way and obstructing pedestrian traffic, we can remove those right away if it's deemed a safety issue. And if a sign is deemed an immediate hazard, we can remove that sign right away. With that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions?
On the non-conforming signs.
Yes, sir.
The last one where it says, and I understand reasonable repair and maintenance of a sign, that says, are to change the copy. So if I have a legal non-conforming sign, and let's say it's for a restaurant, and I say Joe's Diner,
Mm-hmm.
and I sell the building, and the sign is still there, and it's a different business, it's not a restaurant, they can change the sign, still use it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Or is the intent that they can refresh the copy so it looks clean, but when the property's sold, the non-conforming sign disappears?
The intent is to allow for new businesses to replace those.
Okay, fine.
Yep.
Well, then the change copy is correct.
Okay. Yeah, we'd like new businesses to have a nice, easy startup, and getting a new sign permit with new structure and all that is not always a good way to go. Any other questions? if you don't have any other questions, I'd like to go over my notes that I have about the items that we talked about changing, and see if I've missed anything, and we can vote on that. So we were looking at changing the residential limit for signage from no limit down to matching the existing code. That would be either 4 feet or 6 feet, depending on the residential zoning classification. We were looking at changes to the electronic signage section that would require a minimum of 6 or more seconds, dependent upon my research and what other communities are doing. And we were also talking about changes to the window limits, but I think we ended up with no limit and the possibility of coming back for a change. Okay. Okay, with that, I'm available for any questions.
I do have, can you go back, that last frame that you have up at the
Mhm.
end of your, talked about temporary signs in the right-of-way kind of thing?
Oh, sure thing. Violations with temporary signs in the right-of-way.
Are we talking about yard sale signs?
Those would be allowed to be removed without written notice, yes.
Okay.
The intent of this is not to go after garage sale signs on the
No.
corner.
No, I don't want to, although when I see them up there, for instance, it's Tuesday, and there's
Mhm.
probably 4 or 5 of them still lined
Yeah.
up along Road 2 North.
We would
I
have the
don't-
authority to remove those,
Okay,
yes.
I don't know that you can enforce a whole lot on Saturday and Sunday, because that's expensive.
Mhm.
But I do get kind of tired of seeing them blowing around Monday
Sure.
and Tuesday when they've been up there for a
Absolutely.
week already.
Yeah, under our new ordinance, that is a violation, and we
Okay.
could remove those. We haven't really established a process for repeat offenders on those garage sale signs because we have bigger fish to fry.
Absolutely. No,
if-
I'm not
Yeah,
willing to head up a posse to go out after
Yeah.
yard sailors, but
yeah.
if we're allowed to pick them up, then
Okay,
I'm happy with that.
okay.
Any other questions or comments? Any
Thank you.
concerns?
Thank you.
Just to kind of recap a couple of items here. In this whole process, we've involved not only the community in general, but folks that make signs and the business community were all part of this process from the very beginning, including, I understand, some folks who just found out about it and came to you and asked for some things to be changed, and you accommodated them. So we've, in your opinion, the town has done everything possible to include the community, both the regular community and the business community, in this process, and tried to get as many ideas and opinions worked into this as possible.
In my opinion, yes, that's the case, aside from putting up a sign on the highway, which would have been a good idea, now that I say it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to make that clear so that later, folks would know that every attempt was made to include everybody that showed any interest at all, including the public, which we see en masse here tonight.
Yeah. And
So-
I'd like to say, between now and the time that it's voted on at council, if I receive any comments, those will be put into the staff report. They won't be put in as changes that the staff is recommending, but they will be put in to the staff report as comments, and if the town council would like to act on those, we certainly will accommodate it.
Okay, if there's no other comments, concerns, questions, I'd entertain a motion to move this forward to the city council.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this proposed sign code with the changes that were recommended for the animated sign, and that you'll be forwarding to council.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion, comments, amendments to the motion? All right, seeing as everybody's in agreement here, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passed unanimously. James, thank you for your diligent hard work. Good job.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Moving forward to item 7, non-public hearing action items. Do we have any of those this evening? Any discussion items?
I have one. At our last special meeting where we looked at the proposed ordinance for agricultural, one of the recommendations from the council was, one of the recommendations from Planning and Zoning Commission was that staff have a meeting with some of the public and that Planning and Zoning Commission members be present. Has anything happened with that?
Yes, it has. I was not present at the meeting. I was off that day. I believe that Mr. Freeman was invited to the office, had a meeting with Ruth, members of P&Z, and members of council. We do have a member of the audience who was in attendance here. If you'd like to speak
You'd like for me
speak
to
on
clarify?
it. Yeah, please do.
There was a meeting with Mr. Freeman, the vice mayor, and myself and Ruth Mayday. Mr. Freeman was given an opportunity to state some of the problems that he had with the proposal that we had that night. He offered some comments. Mostly what came out of that was we suggested that he write specific issues that he had with the items that were on the ordinance itself, so we could clearly see what his issues were, and so that also in writing we'd be able to sit down and take a look at them and try to do what we could to address those concerns. And that pretty much was the gist of the meeting, and it's in process now.
He's in process of writing. We
Um,
haven't received anything from him.
We have, he did send a letter to myself, and I'm thinking the other folks that were at the meeting concerning some other meeting that he had a few years ago that he wrote a letter for. But what we asked to get back from him as far as being specific to the ordinance itself, I haven't seen anything or heard anything, but that doesn't mean that he's not working on it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion items?
Is Mr. Freeman the only person in the agricultural end of things here in town that has issues or concerns?
He was the only person at the meeting that had a problem with it, as far as we know.
Okay.
He was very vociferous in his issues. So, did that kind of answer your question?
Not all of them, but I'll wait until the minutes come out.
Okay.
Because I did ask for 3 specific items to be looked at. One of them that I remember was the requirement now that you get the septic system approved by Yavapai County and the town of Chino Valley, and I don't think the town has the expertise on septic systems. And I believe one of the committee members also asked what the impotence behind developing the ordinance was, and I don't think that was addressed.
Those things we can, with further discussion, get figured out on that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, we'll let the town staff deliver a reason behind the ordinance. I will say that there didn't seem to be too many restrictions placed on anybody in the ordinance, from my point of view. And dealing with my line of work, it was pretty minimal. Okay. Any public comments? I don't see anybody here from the public, so they speak again. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move for adjournment.
I have a motion,
Second
a
that.
second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Meeting is closed.